Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, no matter your walk of life, it's always so important to support young talent when it's on the come up. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to guess that you do because you're listening. You're here. You're with us right now. You can subscribe to the podcast and give us one of those big 5-star ratings. But you can find us at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And also, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd really appreciate it. Also, please don't hesitate to follow us on social media. You can find us over at the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram, as the young folk are calling it. Either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and it's the most important thing, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, the moving image at large, because if we're watching it and writing about it and talking about it, we love nothing more than when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, though, we're talking a little bit more Slamdance, because that's what we do. That's how we roll. We love the festival, and it does a lot of fantastic stuff. And we had the unique pleasure of diving into the new film Honeycomb, which is a sort of psychedelic coming-of-age horror movie about 5 small-town girls who abandon their mundane lives and move into an abandoned cabin. Growing increasingly isolated, their world becomes filled with rituals and rules, but the events of one summer night threaten to abruptly end their age of innocence forever. I mean, I'll admit it's the kind of story you think you've heard before, but there is such fresh execution in this, and it's from writer-director the 21-year-old Avalon Fast, who just does a fantastic job with this. And we talked with her about the origin of the story and just how it really is this raw but really sort of very pretty film that, you know, quite frankly, she did for, you know, probably less than no money. But we found out about her, and we found out about, you know, sort of the filmmaking process and how she went about it, and just what's coming up for her. And I mean, I definitely think she's a talent to watch. Then, you know, it would not shock me at all to see her with her own movie on Shudder in 3 to 5 years. She is just that good. But if you're doing any stuff at Slamdance over the rest of the weekend, which goes until Sunday, do check out Honeycomb, but enjoy our talk with Avalon, because it certainly is a good one.
I really enjoyed it. I loved it. And I mean, it's subverting tropes, but kind of leaning into them at the same time. And I mean, I love how there is this evil that's born out of aimlessness almost.
Yes.
I mean, can you, I guess, walk me through sort of the origin of the story for you?
Okay, yeah. For me, it was, you know, there's been so many different themes that have come about with this, and there's a lot of things, but like you said, that evil coming out of boredom almost, you know, it was, they were looking for something, you know, to be evil about, and it's like they created it themselves. They were so bored.
Yeah.
and you know, and then there's also this element with it where they were frustrated with their male friends kind of dominating their world, you know, like you see it in scenes where they're talking and the girls are, you know, like a shadow almost. And I think they were looking for a space to control and to take their power, you know, and once they found that space, it got messy because they, you know,
For
the
sure.
power was too much. Yeah.
Something else I really loved about it, it wasn't necessarily about one of the girls standing out. It felt very much about the group. How important was it for you to not sort of have a star or a sort of it girl and make it more about the sort of group and the ensemble when you're telling the story?
Yeah, I wanted it to be really unpredictable. That was my first thought there, was to make it almost seem like there was a leader or a queen bee, you know, in a way. But for you to never understand who that is. It goes in between, you know, like Willow came up with the idea and they follow her, and then you have this angry character who's named Leader, and it's is that the leader? And then you have, you know, the queen bee in a way. And that was really important for me, for it to be confusing, like who am I following here, who's the most important, and for that to essentially not be important, that they were
Right.
all, yeah.
Now, I mean, I also love how, like, the way you shot the film as well, because I mean, it looks like you're not using a lot of fake light. Everything seems pretty natural. And I mean, you know, we can all come up with ideas for scripts and, you know, that kind of thing, but it takes another level to actually go out and actually shoot it. Like, at what point during this whole process you're like, wait a minute, I might actually be able to make this?
Yeah, the actual like filming has always been a really interesting part for me. It's definitely not my favorite. It gives me a lot of stress. So I'm like, how am I gonna, you know, it's here, it's on a script, and we're talking about it, and I can see it in my head, but to make that happen, you know, is a whole other thing. Um, I think we'd done about 3 or 4 days of filming, and the whole time I never knew if it was gonna get finished. Honestly, I really wanted it to, but with a cast and crew that's all your friends, and you're not paying them, it's like somebody could drop out, somebody could be like, I don't want to do this anymore, and it could kind of, the whole thing could blow up. So it was on like the 5th day of shooting, and people were still motivated, and I was getting all this footage, and we already had almost enough for me to work with, you know, where I was like,
Right.
okay, this is it, it's gonna happen, and that was really exciting.
Well, it's not low budget filmmaking, it's no budget filmmaking, right? You know,
Literally, yeah. Exactly.
now, I mean, I'm curious, just when you're putting all this together, like, did you storyboard? Like, did you sort of know what shots you wanted to put in? Because I mean, I can imagine, especially when you're out in the wilderness, like you're coming up with ideas on the fly too. Like, was there any sort, were you like true to your script, or were you sort of improvising along the way?
There's a lot of the conversation that gets had, the actual dialogue is very true to the script, and I think you can, or myself, I can see it. There's like a almost rigidness with the way they speak
Right,
sometimes, you
right,
know, where, and I like that, and I'm glad it turned out that way, where it wasn't as improv that way, but the scenes were, you know, like if the guys were going to be huddled talking somewhere, it was like wherever we are, wherever we can get to, wherever there's good light. It wasn't structured in that way. And things definitely got changed around, even the sequence of things, you know, it would be like, oh, we shot you guys in your red dresses here, and that was supposed to be shot over here, so we're just gonna flip things around, but the dialogue stayed true to the script.
Something else I love that, I mean, obviously is born out of the no budget mantra of filmmaking. You had limited gore, like whatever violence happened tended to be off screen. Like, how important was that for you? I mean, not just from a money standpoint, but just in terms of creating atmosphere. Because I mean, I always find like the scarier things or the more unsettling things are the ones we have to think of ourselves, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I love gore, honestly, like in movies. Like I love it. I don't wish there was more of it. I'm happy with the amount that there was, but that wasn't what this movie was about for me. There was supposed to be, you know, one moment of like, oh my gosh, that's
Right.
super unsettling. Where did that come from? We haven't seen that yet. And so that was it for me, kind of like wanting the shock value to all be in like a moment rather than throughout the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Is there any part of this entire process that maybe surprised you? Because I can imagine going into directing a film, you've got certain ideas, but it's like what surprised you sort of at the end of it all?
I think when I saw the footage for real, and I was looking at it on my computer, you know, once I was back in Vancouver with it, I was just like, I was so entertained by what we had shot. Like I loved it so much. Certain scenes, you know, where I was just like, wow, this came out, this was in my head like this. I think that surprised me a lot, that I could have a vision in my head and have it come out like that, you know, like that. I think for me was the most surprising, is that I could make something that I'd envisioned in my head.
Well, that's fantastic. And I mean, again, it's one of those films that, like I said, it leans into tropes a little bit because obviously in horror movies, teenage girls are the worst, but it
Yeah.
takes it to a different level. I mean, and then that's really kind of what I enjoyed about it. And I mean, I love your back wall, by the way. So I've got to ask,
Thank you.
like, what are sort of the movies that inspired you to want to do this? Because I mean, especially in watching this, like I saw a bunch of stuff that obviously that you're pulling from. That I mean, so I'm kind of curious from your perspective.
I love Panos Cosmatos. Like Mandy was
Totally.
a huge inspiration for me. Honestly, I have a feeling I watched it during the editing process, which is interesting. But now when I look back, I'm like that gave me so much inspiration in the moment for it. I love Midsummer as well. That it's a similar setting with like sun-soaked horror is different than it being in a creepy dark forest. So that was definitely an inspiration as well. I love Rob Zombie stuff as well, like all of those kind of things in the horror sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some big inspirations for me.
Well, that I love. I mean, just hearing you mention it, I think you put Craft, Mandy, and Midsummer all together and kind of shook it up and made something really interesting. And I love that you mentioned sun-soaked horror as well, because especially when filmmakers, and admittedly indie filmmakers, when they're setting out to make a horror film, they'll try to make it dark and gritty and gross. This goes in the opposite direction. Like, why do you think, from your perspective, we don't get horror sort of basking in the sunlight as much as we do, but like except with a couple of exceptions?
Yeah, for I think it's honestly a personality thing. Sun-soaked days in general give me a lot of dread inside. I don't like waking up to that. It's a strange thing where like summertime really freaks me out. It's weird, it's too hot, I'm uncomfortable. And I feel like the weirdest things happen in that time. For me, like cold dark spaces are like more peaceful.
Right.
Like that's like an inner thing. I don't know where that comes from, but yeah, I think when I see things that creep me out in like a beautiful setting, like a
Yeah.
summer day, that is so much scarier to me because it doesn't make sense.
I love that answer. You're absolutely right too.
Yeah.
Sometimes things can be a little too idyllic.
Yeah, totally.
But you know what? I mean, just to put a bow on this is really, I was so impressed with this film because, I mean, again, there's such a clear focus of vision with the photography and the story you want to tell. But, obviously you did it on no budget, and you're doing stuff that's innovative and fun at the same time. And I mean, I'm out of material, but I mean, just I can't wait to see what you do next. I hope you get to do more. I mean, I think Slamdance is a great spot for you, and I hope your festival tour, wherever it takes you, you get the same results.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to see what happens next.
Well, all right. Well, you know what? That's it for me. But thank you so much for the time today, and congratulations again on the film. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. So nice to talk with you.
Nice to talk to you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.